Thanks everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Artist Backstory featuring our wonderful videographer Andrew Collins, who's on the other side of the camera. On behalf of the MAC, I'd like to welcome Mr. Richard Alm to the Oceanside Gallery of the Macmillan Arts Centre with his incredible exhibit. You have to come and see it. This exhibit is on until June the 27th. And now we actually get a chance to learn a little bit about Mr. Richard Alm. So let's start off the top. And Richard, what made you realize that you were an artist?
I was grade 3. And the girl in front of me, her name was Dagan, and I've never forgotten this because I pulled her pigtail one day and she turned around and stabbed me right there. And I was in grade 3, and that piece of lead is still in my hand. The funny part of that was her father was the head of the art department of the local high school. I'm in grade 3 and it was coloring contest. So Richard came out on top of this grade 3 coloring contest adjudicated by her father. Ernie Lindner. His name was Ernie Lindner. His daughter's name was Dagan Lindner. And Ernie went on to become my art guide, if you will, or mentor all the way through high school. In fact, when I was in grade 10 and 11, he hired me out to the local print shop to be the commercial artist of record for them.
Wow.
So he became a very important part of my life. But the funny thing was, I was sitting at the desk here 2 days ago, and a lady came in and she said, she looked around and she said, when did you graduate? I said, 1967. She said, University of Saskatchewan. I said, yes. Well, she said, me too. And she said, but I was going to be an artist. And my favorite artist was, and I couldn't remember his name, but he did this lifelike pencil drawings and so on. And I said, I know who that was. That was Ernie Lindner.
So after 40 years of international travel and industrial design, what made you think about pulling out those brushes from under the stairs and become a painter?
My mother.
Oh.
When I had her come to Vancouver about 15 years ago, and we painted in my studio in Vancouver. But, so I'd promised my mother when I'd seen the world, got rich and famous, and retired, I would start painting again. Well, I saw the world, the rich and famous didn't happen, but I pulled the brushes out, and that was about 19 and a half, 20 years ago now.
Oh.
So I look at it as my final career.
Oh.
Because each one of the inventions was a career in itself. And the reason I took the brushes out, the second reason I took the brushes out, is because of exactly that. When you're an inventor, you're lucky if you end up with 1% of anything, maybe 3% if you're really lucky. Because when you take an idea, then you fund a prototype, and then you take that to the financiers, and then you go to the stock market, there are sharks in the water everywhere you go. So, having done that 4 times, I said, you know, if I paint a good painting, it's my fault. If I paint a bad painting, it's still my fault. There ain't nobody can get in the way and screw it up.
Yeah.
Right? So that, to me, was returning home. And when I came over here 4 years ago, that was, although we're Flatlanders, we're from Saskatoon, this was more like home than anywhere. The quietness and so on.
I love that you consider the MAC home too.
Yeah.
So did you know that if you were to come here and visit Richard, you're here most days from 11 till 3, and decide to purchase one of his beautiful pieces, you actually get a couple of freebies because you know. So right here is this colorful display, and it's not just a display. It's actually, from what I understand, limited edition sticks. So tell us a little bit about that, Richard.
Well, this is our limited edition stick shtick. Did I say that right?
Try and say that 10 times fast.
This is a perfect lead-in to structural, or we'll call it spatialist, the spatialist concept.
Well, I could say, so if somebody buys a painting and they get to choose their own color, do they?
They get to choose their own color. I will hand sign it.
See, it's totally worth it.
And it'll be a one of probably 32.
The first time I heard this word Nouveau spatialism or Spatialist Nouveau
See?
was from your conversation with me about a year ago when we started talking about the exhibit that we're having here at the Oceanside, in the Oceanside Gallery, and I'd never heard of it. And what followed was an absolutely fascinating recount of what Nouveau spatialism is, or Spatialist Nouveau. So I think it's time for the world out there to hear the same story, because it really, really is something very unique. So,
Spatialist was something that we researched to try and find a match with the big curves painting over there and behind us. And it turned out the Spatialist was a movement in the New York area in 1948 and 49. And their main belief was that science and art are not two separate phenomenon. You know, the science of creating squares and triangles is combined with the art of choosing color, if you will.
mm-hmm.
But the Spatialist movement that I'm trying to promote here is more for the student to
mm-hmm.
come and try something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also for the collector, because you can't copy these things.
So tell us a little bit about how it all works. How do you put things together when you're looking at a canvas or a frame or even an image, or you know, that you're looking at? How do you approach it?
You take a stick and you take some canvas and you make a little drawing of what you want to do, and you build it. It's like carpentry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so structured canvas is nothing more than carpentry, but in unique situations, right? Angles and curves and so on. And then you create stretcher bars that you stretch canvas on, hence that they become very light.
Yeah.
And it's, why do canvases have to be flat?
Well,
explain to me that one.
None of these are, which is fascinating. I mean, you've got images in a frame on top of a frame.
Precisely.
You've got things that are cut up and then re-put back together.
Yeah.
You've got things that are, like you said, are curved and wonderful. And do you find that it's freeing? Like,
I think I pointed out the Mondrian piece. Very simple. I made 6 canvases and stuck them, painted each one separate, and stuck them together with sticks. There we go. More
back
sticks,
to the stick.
right? More sticks. And in looking at Mondrian, that was what was freeing. I just finished painting the backyard.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, more detail, more detail. And then I realized, I remembered my studies way back in the 60s. Mondrian was hot news back then. What they didn't realize that what he was presenting was what the tulip fields looked like from the air. There's the yellow ones, there's the orange ones.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
It seems to me that the landscape of France is rolly and hilly, and or wherever they're growing has hills and vales.
Okay, so it seems to me that you, as a Spatialist Nouveau artist, look at things differently. Like you were talking about tulips as a grid and things. Do you find that your eye separates and reconnects?
I see it in 3D.
Ah.
I see it. Some
Yeah.
people do. I think in bringing the show here, I really would like to reach out to the students, the art students, and the artists. I know there's a bunch, and it became, what can I do with a stick and a canvas? And it evolved. In fact, the student will want to know what I'm going to show you next.
Good. Well, let's do that. Let's go over and have a look at a couple pieces, and if you don't mind, you can bring us even closer to your beautiful work.
All right. This is the first of the Spatialist pieces I did. And it's the center section, which I'll show you in a minute. I happen to have 2 other canvases that I didn't like, so I covered them over and created this montage, if you will, of the eureka moment, I call it. It goes from the question, we think in vertical patterns, by the way. And so these are vertical thought patterns.
That's the science part.
That's the science part, coming out to an answer over here.
It's wonderful,
Okay?
wonderful. So how did you put it together?
Canvases can be bolted together or screwed together. In this case, I bolted them together. But the thing I want you to notice is the ribbing effect in here. This is a stretcher bar. Yeah. And this happens to be on a 1-inch circumference, top dead center, bottom dead center. And that's the distance you measure when you lay the canvas out flat to paint it. So you make a grid.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about your Canada flag piece. I'd love to.
Well, this flag is waving in this direction because this is obviously where the pole goes, but this is more for the student. Because if you look at the backside, it's totally different. Mm-hmm. And when you're stretching canvas in different directions, you have to make sure that you're bracing the cross members appropriately all the way around. Done correctly.
You can actually see that this part of the canvas is being stretched differently from this part, for example.
Yeah.
That is so fascinating. So fascinating.
And normally I would probably cover the backside with paper or something so this wouldn't show up. But, I mean, the two top and bottom rails, as they're called rails,
yeah,
are different, but they're dimensional. If you can see, they go up, down, and sideways, right? Mm-hmm. Get a stick and get some canvas and make your own.
We're back to the stick. You've got to come to the MAC. You've got to come and see Richard's beautiful work. He has so much to talk about. You have so much to learn. Thank you so much, Richard. He'll be here at the MAC till June the 27th, and all of the sale proceeds from his beautiful exhibit are coming to the MAC. So it's time for you to buy a piece of art for your home.